goal setting is very important. And also attached with the goal is why. Why do you want that goal? So for me, is I want to go home on time so that I can spend it with my family. So that's my goal. For someone else, maybe to go to the yoga class or do something that they enjoy, whatever it is, you got to remember why you're doing it and remind yourself throughout the day that, oh, I want to finish, on time. And of course, once you see the results that, oh, I'm actually getting better of doing it, then the more you believe in yourself too.
Welcome to the Physicians and Properties Podcast, the show where we teach you how investing in real estate can give you the freedom to practice medicine and live life how you want.
Doctor!
Now, here's your host, Dr. Alex Schloe.
Are you a physician who is stressed, overwhelmed, burnt out, drowning in patient notes? If you are, then this is the Physicians and Properties episode for you. I'm your host, Dr. Alex Schloe, and today I'm grateful to have on the podcast Dr. Mary Leung, who is a board-certified hematologist and oncologist, also a certified life coach who's passionate about serving physicians who are stressed, overwhelmed, and burnt out. She was working and charting many nights and weekends until life coaching completely transformed her life. Dr. Mary, welcome to the Physicians and Properties Podcast. So glad to have you on the podcast tonight, all the way from New York. Thanks for staying up late to record this podcast. How are things going?
Great. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really excited to dive into your journey and everything that you've been working on. It's been really cool seeing your journey on LinkedIn and all the wisdom that you've been sharing. So I figured, hey, let's get that on the podcast so a lot more people can also benefit from it as well.
Great.
Awesome. Well, do you mind telling folks a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I am Mary, and originally actually grew up in Hong Kong, and my parents are still there. They're retired. They're both physicians. That's not exactly the reason why I became one, but definitely a big influence. They never forced me to be one. I think my journey really started, wanting to help people. Very simple wish and hope. And I thought, well, being a physician, that seemed to be the right fit for me. So just work hard, went into medical school, residency, and I really enjoyed that long-term relationship and that special connection with the patient. So I also chose oncology because of that. And then so fast forward to getting my first attending job after fellowship was that I thought that I made it, right? At the top of the world, supposedly. Then I found myself, I joined this group practice. Everyone's very nice. But then I found myself just working really, really hard to the point that I was getting exhausted. I was charting after hours with full schedule. And at that time, my kids were still young. And so I would just go home after 7 and not having everything done most of the nights, only to see my kids so they would still recognize me. And then after they went to bed, I would be charting some more. It wasn't really sustainable, but I just kept doing it, just going through the motions, the routine, and I didn't feel like I was enjoying practicing medicine anymore because I was just barely surviving at that point. So fast forward to the pandemic, and all of a sudden, of course, the world kind of came to a halt, not quite in medicine. I mean, I was thankful that I wasn't in kind of the first line of defense, but we still had to see patients, like chemo patients, if they didn't get treated, they would die, type of situation. So then we tried to delay a lot of patients' appointments that are not urgent ones. And so I was just seeing about a third of the patients that I normally would see. And I got a taste of going home on time with everything done. I was like, what is this? This is wonderful, amazing. I mean, I didn't want to have the pandemic, but something amazing came out of this. And I thought, well, what if I could just do this if, back when, if I went back to seeing the full load of patients, which is on average about 25 patients a day with hematology and oncology patients, mixed in. So then around that time, I got exposed to something called life coaching. No clue what that was. I thought coaching was just for sports. As you know, you played, baseball, right? And so then I was just so desperate that I thought, you know what, let me just try something new, something different. It seemed like, it worked for some people. So I joined a women physicians group coaching program by physician. And then at the same time, I was like, wow, this is interesting. Talk about how, we're affected by how we think about things and how we feel and how we act. And it just all makes sense. And no one taught me these things when I was younger. So then I wanted to learn more. So I joined a certification program for life coaching too around that time because I had the time to do it, during the pandemic. Well, like the first year or so of the pandemic. So then at the same time, in my group coaching program, I just talked to one of the coaches. I work with one of them, and I said that, well, the biggest problem for me for, feeling so drained and really overwhelmed and burned out was the extra hours that I was working. I wanted to cut down on my charting time. So then I worked with a coach, and really not just on the techniques on how to be more efficient. It's really the whole mindset shift that I learned and how to think of things, how to start my day and all these things. So in about 3 months, and at that time, I was already back to seeing 20 some patients a day, that I was able to go home by 5:30 with all my work done. So I thought, wow, that's amazing, wonderful. And I had time to really spend with my family, quality time with my kids. So then I thought, what if I could just share this with other physicians and just help other physicians do the same? So that's how Shining with Gratitude MD was born. That, I just want to help physicians, through my one-on-one coaching to who is going through the same thing that I went through, to, be able to leave work on time with everything done. So there's no pajama time, no charting at home, on the weekends or at nights. And they get to, do what they enjoy doing after hours. And also maybe, have the capacity to enjoy practicing medicine again.
That's amazing. Yeah, well, there's definitely no shortage of physicians that can use some help with this. Super important. And, I think it's hard. It's really hard to find that balance of getting everything done and the efficiency while also trying to maximize your time with the patient and form that relationship. And you can certainly be staring at the computer and typing the whole time, but then it's like, well, then you lose out on building that relationship and looking the patient in the eyes and being present. And that's super important in medicine, of course. And so it's definitely a balance that's really tough to navigate. So thank you for sharing that. And thanks for doing what you do, because the more physicians that can get home earlier and spend more time with their kids, the better physicians are going to be the next day when they go see more patients. And so I think that that's really important. It's also really cool, Mary, to see how, like you mentioned, something as ugly as the pandemic turned into something as beautiful as you getting home 2.5 hours earlier and getting to spend time with your family and not having that stress and that burden. I always try and finish my notes before I leave. I don't bring my work home. I just never have. And I learned that early on and just was like, hey, I'm just going to make that decision. And I've learned that Parkinson's law, work is going to expand to the time that you give it. And so I just try and slam through the notes as best I can. But I know, there's times where I'm like, hey, my cutoff time is this. And if I still have notes remaining, I'll wait till tomorrow, or the next day, but I'm so much more anxious. Because then it's like, well, here comes another round of 20 patients plus the notes I didn't get done yesterday. Now I got to try and get all those done, And so it certainly is something that a lot of us struggle with for sure. What were some things that you learned early on working with a life coach that was beneficial for you from that perspective?
Yeah, so I think one of the first things I learned is really how we think about things. It's, so if you're not conscious of what you're thinking, then you're just kind of being controlled by your default thinking. So say if you wake up in the morning and you're feeling tired and what you're thinking is, oh, I don't want to go to work today, right? So how does that feel? You already feel the dread, you're already kind of slow and maybe, because of how you're feeling, every little thing can be annoying to you. And you kind of doing things slowly, as opposed to say, if you wake up in the morning and you choose to think differently. Say if you choose to think that, oh, today is another day for me to make a difference. I always share, with other people that my favorite sentence for myself is, it's going to be a good day no matter what happens. So for me, that is that, okay, so I decide how my day is going to be. I mean, I don't get to decide what will happen, like the little details of the day, but I set the tone for the day to start with. And then no matter what happens that means that there are going to be surprises, especially in medicine. So if you're in emergency medicine, for example, forget it. It's going to be a lot of surprises, right? You don't know who is going to be rolled in. But even in the outpatient setting, like you in family medicine or me, in the hematology oncology clinic, it's that sometimes, yes, you have the scheduled patients, but you may have some add-ons. You may have some patients telling you unexpected things, so no matter what happens, or technology goes down, so whatever, which happens all the time.
All the time.
And all the time. Exactly. Or the computer is thinking too long. So whatever happens is like, all right, you know what? This is a situation. I'm just going to deal with it, as opposed to you arguing with reality to say that, oh, it shouldn't have happened. And that time would have been wasted, and you're wasting your mental energy rather than, utilizing and doing something more helpful. So I think really how you start your day and be, intentional to choosing how you start your day is so important.
Yeah, I agree. I too often wake up with, I'm so tired, and then you just feel so much more tired throughout the day instead of waking up with that proper intention. Do you have a morning routine that you follow, or kind of how you set your intention? Or is it more like, do you journal and write it down first thing in the morning? Or what's that look like for you, kind of your morning routine as you're getting ready?
My morning routine is actually, I do those journaling at night before I go to bed.
Yeah.
So kind of like, I think what is also very important is actually sleep. We got to have enough rest, because when we don't get enough rest physically, we're just not well equipped. And that, our mind body is so connected that, we're just going to be grumpy all day long without enough rest. And it's going to take us longer to make decisions, and we're not going to be as sharp. So I think sleeping is so important. And to prepare myself to doing that is to, just to quiet myself down. I have a quiet time routine that I also do a little journaling, and that's what I do. And then when I sleep, I just like, this is my sleeping time. I'm not going to think about anything, until the morning, because then after a good night's sleep, then you're just going to be rested, recharged, refreshed to face another day in a better mood, and really better both physically and mentally. So then after I wake up, it's like I'm really conscious of what I'm going to think. It's like, yeah, sure. I can think that, oh, I'm kind of tired. I don't really want to go to work. But then I catch myself say, right, sure. But then a better way to think of it is that, I can focus on that it's going to be a good day, and then I'll just get it done fast, and I'm going to manage, and I'm going to, lead my team in the same spirit, which I do. We have like a little, I guess that's, just to fast forward to when I'm already in the clinic time, the routine is also, it's like, I usually go over, my list of patients quickly with my staff. I work with a medical assistant and also a nurse, and just kind of point out that, okay, this person needs, this patient needs what, that patient may need an injection, a calendar for the chemo, whatever it is. Or this patient, try not to have them, talk to you too much, because they will continue to talk all day long. I mean, we love them, yes, but we got to have, set the time limits, like little things like that. So I think, that routine is so important, and how you also set the tone for your clinic, as I think as a physician, you're the leader of the team, and how, what your attitude is like, that really affects your whole team.
I love that. Yeah. That's awesome. Gratitude is something I've been trying to work on. My routine typically, I wake up in the morning, I go to the gym, work out. It's right next to the clinic. Then I go sit in my car, read the Bible, journal. And that's when I usually try and, write down some gratitudes and, just thoughts. It's really like a stream of consciousness for me, because one day I want to be able to look back on those journals and be like, oh man, this is what I was thinking about or doing or learning at this point in time. which is really cool. But I think that morning routine can be really helpful, or nightly routine can be really helpful to set that intention. And it's a really good idea to do that at night, to go to sleep feeling grateful for the day, having that intention already set, and then you wake up in the morning and you're ready to go. And I love what you said, that you may have that thought that you're really tired in the morning or you don't want to go to work, but you reframe it. And I heard a great quote that's basically like, the only thought that you can't control is your first one. And I love that quote. And I've been thinking about it so much. I talked about it on the last podcast too, because I've just been thinking about that a lot, of like just how much what we think about and what our mind's occupied with, how much that impacts our day. And it's wild. I mean, even just thinking back to when you're mentioning, like, patients are going to ask for other things, or they're going to show up late, or whatever it may be. In family medicine, that happens all the time. It's always the like, oh, hey, doc, by the way, I wasn't going to mention it, but I'm having terrible left-sided
always when you're at the door, pain. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so I've really been trying to be grateful for the opportunity to take care of patients in their time of need. And that sounds kind of corny, but it's true. And I've realized that, like, when those things happen and you like take the extra time, you get blessed in some other way. And that may look like your next patient comes in and it's really straightforward and easy and takes a couple minutes and you're done and you catch back up, or there's a no-show or something like that. The times that I get really worked up about it is when that doesn't happen, and it's just a worse outcome for me and for the patient. And then the time that I just am like, you know what, it's okay. Let's take that extra time. It's going to be fine. It always works out in the end. So it's just really interesting.
It is so true. It always works out in the end. It's like, so for me, I would say on average, my schedule is that about every 15 minutes, it's a follow-up patient. And on paper, I have an hour for a new patient, but in reality, maybe 30 to 45 minutes, because they always like to double book me for some reason. Well, I mean, I know what the reason is, because I have a lot of patients. and so the thing is like, I enjoy having both hematology and oncology patients, because, sometimes, some benign hematology patients are straightforward. So those are kind of my breathers, so to speak. And then, of course, there are these more complicated oncology patients. Sometimes we may have to talk about hospice. We may have to talk about progression of disease or side effects, or, all these different things that will take more time. So then, yes, I will take the time when I need to use the time. But also at the same time is that I realize that you don't need a lot of time to make that connection with the patients. You just have to be present. When you walk into the room and you sense the atmosphere of the room, you sense that if the patient is anxious or the patient is like relieved or at peace, then you kind of go accordingly, and you listen to what they have to say and see what the unspoken language is. And you kind of like, just address what what they're telling you. And that's the connection that they need. Like, okay, you know what? I'm being seen, I'm being heard, I'm being cared for. And that's all they need. And sometimes it's just really 2 more extra sentences, and that's it. And so I think that's also one of the things, is like, for me to let other physicians know that, no, you don't need a whole hour to connect with a patient. Sometimes it's really just talking about something common, like what sports you play, or, what show you watch and what books you read, like things outside of the diagnosis itself. And that's our connection. And then we'll just continue the conversation the next time. And I think that, of course, be mindful of your clinic time, of your schedule. And I always do that, even to this day, that I would say that I've mastered the time part of things with charting efficiency, because these days I'm done before 5:00. So with the 20-some patients, like yesterday, I saw 26 patients. I left by 4:50.
Wow.
So, of course, there are days that will take a little bit longer if they're more complicated patients. But I guess my point is that, it's always working. And sometimes, you may choose to spend more time with the patients because that's what they need. And sometimes if there's just straightforward, nothing to talk about, that's okay. Then you're like, okay, I'll see you next time.
That's great. Wow, 26 patients and you're done by 4:50. That's awesome. I had when I see kids, I always ask them at the end of the appointment, I'll say, do you have any other questions for me? Or do you have any questions? And it's really funny because like the 4-year-olds and the 6-year-olds, the questions are so funny. It's, they're like, I had one the other day and he's like, Dr. Schloe, do you like chocolate? And I'm like, yes, I love chocolate, And one of them was like, what's your favorite construction vehicle? I'm like, I don't know, like a bulldozer. And he's like, you're wrong. It should be an excavator, And it's just really funny. But I had one, he was 7 years old and he said, Dr. Schloe, how many patients do you see in a day? And I was like, well, around 20. And he's like, 20? That's way too many. And I was like, man, this kid's 7 years old, 8 years old, and he gets it. But I think that there's, the efficiencies that you've learned makes it where you can see 26 and really feel connected to them. And I think that a lot of us, maybe, some of us physicians who are newer to the game still have a lot to learn. And so I bring that up to ask, like, what are some tips and tricks that you've learned that have made charting more efficient for you, or some ways that have helped you streamline your workday? Let's take a quick break to hear a word from our sponsors. As a physician, balancing your medical career with a growing real estate portfolio can be challenging. That's where Dr. Doc comes in. They don't just offer loans, they provide tailored financial solutions designed by doctors for doctors. Dr. Doc has already helped customers secure millions fast, headache-free funding for their real estate investments. With their streamlined process, you get quick liquidity, no prepayment penalties, and a soft credit check, meaning no impact on your credit score if a deal falls through. Looking to expand your investment property portfolio? Dr. Doc offers competitive rates and customized options to help you build wealth and diversify your assets. They also offer solutions for consolidating debt or home improvements. Join the thousands of doctors who trust Dr. Doc for fast funding and personalized support. Say goodbye to financial roadblocks and hello to your next investment success.
Yeah, so I'll just say first off is every day is learning and growing. So, I learn new things every day, and even from my patients, I learn new things. So I think one of the most important thing is, besides starting our day that we talked about is, set a goal for yourself. It's like set a goal of when do you want to go home? Like say if you're going home after 7 o'clock and still have charts to be done like I was, then to set your goal to go home by 5 right now, it's not quite realistic. I mean, that could be your eventual like long-term goal, but maybe right now it's like, maybe I'll go home by 7 with everything done and, not bringing home anything, and then just work it backwards like that. So that goal setting is very important. And also attached with the goal is why. Why do you want that goal? So for me is I want to go home on time so that I can spend it with my family. So that's my goal. For someone else, maybe to go to their yoga class or, do something that they enjoy, whatever it is. So you got to remember why you're doing it and remind yourself throughout the day that, oh, I want to finish, on time because, so I think, just that to be your backbone of the day of how you operate is so important. So next is really to believe that you can do it. Because if you don't believe in yourself or in being able to achieve that, you're not going to put in the effort to do it. So I think, the belief part is so important. And of course, once you see the results that, oh, I'm actually getting better of doing it, it's like the more repetition, the more, that you can achieve, then the more you believe in yourself too. So, but you got to start somewhere to at least have some kind of belief that eventually you can do it. Next thing is very important is focus. Especially in medicine, we always get distracted, right? Which I'll talk about in a second. But the focusing part is like, you really have to be intentional in focusing, do one thing at a time, no multitasking. I would say, because we think that we're like superhuman being, that, we're doctors, we can do everything and we can do multiple things at the same time. Not quite so. I mean, we can do a lot of things, but just not everything at the same time, because, if we try to do 3 things all at once, it just means that we're just task switching from one to another and back to the other. And then it takes us that much longer to settle down in our mind to say, oh, this is what we're doing. I was like, oh, what was I doing again? So it's just focus on doing one thing and then move on to the next. So meaning like, say, especially in the outpatient setting, it's like you want to really see one patient finish their chart, their orders, and whatever it is related to that one patient before moving on to the next one. So of course that we have to talk about distractions. So the distraction part is I group that into different categories. It's like the external and the internal distraction. So the external, it's like things that seemingly not able to be controlled by you. So like, phone calls or your staff member, telling you something, those type of things. So I think in a sense, it's like you can control that by setting out protocols to tell your staff that, hey, don't disturb me while I'm seeing patients unless, like say if there's an emergency or someone is passed out or something like that, right? So that would minimize the interruptions. And I think, for example, the internal distractions is like, your mind wandering. It's like, oh, I wonder, what is going to be for tonight's dinner, something like that. Or if you hear the notifications, like, oh, I wonder what the email is about or the text is about. So one thing you can do is really silence your phone or put it away. I would say email notification, turn off the sound, because you're just very tempted, even if you don't look at it, just the second that you think about it, you're already distracted. And if you do that multiple times a day, right, it's going to be adding up to be minutes, because I'll just say throughout the day, it's like every second counts. So you really want to be mindful of that. And when you're seeing the patient, you really want to, when you're in the room, you really want to pay attention to what they're saying to you. And if possible, see how your clinic is set up. So for example, you want to set up the exam room in a way that you're facing the patient, and ideally also the computer is set up in a way that you can face the patient. So for me, it's like I'm actually able to type the HPI, when they're telling me what's going on. So then I don't have to live through this again outside of the exam room. And that's the same idea, is that, you really want to try to finish your notes before seeing the next patient. So you're done with that patient. So now you can focus. So that's kind of enhancing your focus on that next patient, and you can make better decisions that way. And of course, people will ask me about, oh, what about a scribe? What about AI and all these things? Everyone is different. And also whatever resources you have, every, institution is also different. So you utilize whatever you have, and that's okay. It's like me, I don't have a scribe. It's just me and the computer, and that's okay. And I do use dictation, like Dragon dictation. That's what we have. It's great, so I do a hybrid, combination of typing in the room, and then I dictate outside of the room, whatever I didn't finish. So whatever works for you, sometimes it's just trial and error. And, if you have a scribe, you probably have to train the person really, really well. So, and that's okay. Of course, initially it would take you time, but eventually you'll benefit from it so much, right? Of all the hours that you would save. So I think those are kind of like of course we can talk all about the technical aspects, and I think, but today it's really more focusing on the mindset and kind of like in general terms, what you can do. And it's actually doesn't just apply to practicing medicine in everything else too. The other two things I want to talk about is delegation. So, I talk about, I have a team. So it's like you as a physician, you do your best to delegate whatever everyone else can do. So like say making phone calls back to the patient, telling them to supplement iron, whatever it is. So you delegate as much as you can, because that saves you so much time. Because when you call back the patient, sometimes they may say, oh, doc, I want to ask you this too, and that may happen less when it's the nurse calling the patient back, So you want to do that. The other thing is, I would just say it goes together. It's like, the practicing gratitude part, and also to celebrate, really appreciate what you have. And throughout the day, it's like, there's really no set rule in celebration. Say if you have 20 patients in a day, after seeing 2 patients, you can just say to yourself, yes, I saw 2 patients, 18 more to go, it's like 10% done, which is like, you want that boost of dopamine to kind of like, keep you going. And of course, another thing to keep you going is really a lot of us don't do is to take scheduled breaks, because those are so important to really keep your mind fresh and recharge. Lunch break is very important. I used to skip it. I was thinking that, oh, I'll just, work through the day, but then realized that second half of the day, I was slowing down. And because I was having decision fatigue and I was like really, so I couldn't keep up with the charts in the second half of the day. So definitely, if anything, at least take a lunch break. Yeah.
Those are great tips. I found for me a few things that have also been helpful. Well, also I love Dragon. Do utilize an AI scribe, which has been really helpful. And I also have a standing desk in my office, and I got a treadmill underneath. And so
Wow.
I can dictate and walk at the same time. And that's been awesome. So there's been some days, especially Thursday afternoons, I have some administrative time where I'm like, oh man, I just walked like 5 miles while doing my notes from the morning and doing this admin time.
Wow.
That's been huge for me to just be moving. And I found that like when I'm just sitting there trying to do notes, I get so tired and get so distracted. But then when I'm walking and trying to do them at the same time, I tend to probably take a little bit longer to get the notes done, but I'm able to focus a lot more. So it evens itself out. But those are some really great tips. I need to work on the lunch break one. I'm bad about that. I'm definitely eating and charting because for me, it's our duty day in the Air Force ends at 4:30. So like, that's my goal. I was like, hey, I want to be done by 4:30, want to get home and spend time with the kids. Cause my boys, they're young. They still go to bed pretty early. And so that's tough too. And I think another thing for me that I had to learn was just saying no and realizing that every time I said yes to something that did not directly correlate with acute patient care, I was saying no to my family. And so I realized that early on, and that was really helpful for me too. But yeah, I love that. And those are some really, really great tips. How have you seen some of those things translate into your life outside of medicine and at home and so forth?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing really how I feel, I think in the past, before this happened, I was always exhausted, drained, and easy to feel angry and very stressed and overwhelmed. So those were my main emotions. I mean, I had moments of happiness and all, but it was just more percentage of time, being in those unpleasant emotions. And it's like I'm more time spent in feeling grateful, content, and joy, and really have the capacity to connect with my patients, which this is the reason that I went into medicine, or me besides helping people in the first place. So it's kind of like back to, this is exactly what I want. I mean, not to say that nothing is perfect. There is still a lot of room for improvement. And of course, in the practice, it's like, if I have a choice, it's like, would I see 25 patients a day? Probably not, maybe like 20 or so for me right now. And things can change. Like, when I get older, the numbers may change, like the way that I practice may change, and that's okay. But I think for now, it's that I just feel like that I get to enjoy practicing medicine and enjoy that teamwork that I have cultivated. It's really amazing. And I just think that if more physicians can, experience that, then maybe, we will help the healthcare system in a sense that there will be less of a mass exodus of physicians retiring. And hopefully that when we get older and when we're retired ourselves, that maybe we'll still have doctors to see.
Yeah, that would be really nice. I won't get you started on the healthcare system because we both promised we wouldn't get going on that. But yeah, I'll just say it's broken and we'll leave it at that. That's great. Mary, if someone's sitting here, they're listening to this and they're thinking about just getting involved, getting a life coach, what are some things that you would tell them or recommend they consider?
I would say that, think about the why. Why do you want, like, what do you want to change from, where you are now, where you want to be, and how that coach can help you do that. So I think that's, one of the things. And, I always encourage people to ask for help. I think for the longest time, I thought that, I'm supposed to figure out everything myself. I'm the doctor. Of course, of course I'm supposed to know everything, even though I don't. So it's okay to ask for help, and please ask for help when you need it. And sometimes it may be a coach, it may be a mentor, so you want to find someone who you can connect with, and maybe even someone who has that experience that you're going through, because then they know firsthand, what is going on, even though your lives are different, but then that's kind of the special connection. So I think that's a, very important thing. And I think the other thing is that some people may think that, having a coach, it seems like it's a very expensive thing to do. But then it's like, if you think about really the return of investment, say for me, it's myself, that yes, I paid like 5 digits of, coaching, but it's like the hours that I gained back, not talking about a year, and for the years to come, that those are the hours that I gained back, from not going home after 7, it's like 2-3 hours a day at least that I gained back for however many weeks and years that I work. And not just the time that we cannot buy back, it's also how we feel, how I feel, my emotional state, my mental well-being, my physical well-being, and the connection I have with not just the patients, with my family, with my friends. It's like all these things that you cannot necessarily measure by, by the, I guess, the monetary means. And also like just to explore, having the capacity to explore new things. Like, we talk about, of course, it's talking about real estate investing. It's like, if you're barely surviving, if you're working till like 10 o'clock at night and it's time to go to bed, and then just to start the next day, how do you have the capacity to even think about, having a side income to replace your current income as a clinician? So I think it's like all these things, and, it's endless benefits that I have received and I want to share with other people.
I love that. Yeah, I think it's, return on investment, return on your time, return on your happiness, and then the return of your passion and what you love, because you have that time back, which is really cool. So there's definitely a lot of different ways to think about that besides just monetarily. And I think that's something that's hard for folks to wrap their heads around sometimes. Is like, oh man, this is really expensive. Is it going to be worth it? Well, you think about, like you mentioned, 2 to 3 hours back per day, 10 to 15 hours back per week with your kids, with your family, doing the things that you love. Figure out how much is that worth. It's worth a lot for sure. Yeah. I know it is for me. Well, Mary, I want to pivot a little bit. I know you worked on a new book. You wrote a new book called Made for More 2, where you collaborated with 17 different physicians on how it's possible to live life and practice medicine the way that they want to. What were some things that you learned on that journey, writing that book and collaborating with those physicians?
So this is the book.
That's awesome.
Yes. And so it's actually, first of all, I want to really give thanks to Dr. Una. She's the one who organized and make this collaboration possible. And I'm part of her, in her group coaching right now. And I think the experience is wonderful, because I never thought that I would say that I'm an author, and it's kind of fun just to be able to share my own journey. A lot of what we talked about tonight is, just to share that, oh, wow, there's actually actual life, something different, something more inspiring and hopeful for other physicians to look at. And you can actually have, like, say, some of the physicians in there, they have very successful private practices, be it insured patients or uninsured. I mean, like they're a fee for service, type of practices, or they coaches, or they're speakers, or they sell their own creations, their own products. So it's like there are all these different things that basically we're sharing how we can carve our life, our work life, our outside of work life to be the way that we want, if we're intentional about it. And there's really a way to do it. Yes, we talk about this a lot, like the system is broken, but it's like there individually, we can do something about it. Just like me, it's like, yes, if I have a choice, I would see less patients a day. At the same time, it's like I am doing things to make myself more efficient and to be thriving instead of just surviving, in this environment, and to help other physicians do the same.
That is great. Well, if physicians listening to this, they want to connect with you, they want to learn more about how to thrive and potentially join your coaching program, how can they do that?
Yes. So you can visit my website, shiningwithgratitudemd.com. And my email is shiningwithgratitudemd@gmail.com because I'm really very grateful for what has happened to me and sharing with other people. I'm also on LinkedIn, Mary Leung, MD.
That's great. Awesome. Well, Mary, it's been so great having you on the podcast tonight. Thank you so much for sharing so much gratitude, so much wisdom, so many tips. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. Absolutely. Well, with that, it's been Dr. Mary Leung and Dr. Alex Schloe with another episode of the Physicians and Properties podcast, signing off. Hey, real quick, if you're still listening to this, I'm assuming you got value from it. So I need your help specifically. My 2-year vision with this podcast is to help 100,000 physicians learn how investing in real estate can give you the freedom to practice medicine and live life how you want. There are 2 main ways that a podcast grows. One is through ratings and reviews, and the other is word of mouth. If you can please leave me a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, as well as send this to 1 to 2 friends that you think would get value from it, we can reach the physicians that we want to reach. Thanks in advance, and talk to you on the next episode. Please note that the information shared on this podcast is for informational purposes only. It should not be considered financial or medical advice. The views expressed on this podcast are those of the host and the guest and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Department of Defense or the United States Air Force.